All right, good morning and welcome everyone to How to Protect Your Family from the Coronavirus. We have two amazing speakers for you today. So before I bring them on, I wanted to run through their bios. And for anyone that doesn't know who I am, I'm Renee Bells. I'm actually Dr. Sambatero's daughter. I can't see everyone's faces, but I'm recognizing some names from the Julian Center. It's good to see everybody here. Awesome, so before I bring them on, I know a lot of you know Dr. Sambatero, but for anyone that's new to the Julian Center, so Dr. Sambatero has been practicing dentistry for 40 years, with 35 of those years being in biological dentistry. He graduated from the University of Maryland in 1980 and has always understood the connection between oral health and overall health. He also embraces the mind, body, and spirit of optimal health. He has studied under many great mentors in holistic dentistry, most notably Dr. Hal Huggins. He's also studied restorative dentistry, nutritional philosophy of Weston Price, craniosacral therapy with Dr. John Upledger, applied kinesiology, and many other healing modalities. His greatest interest now is in sleep medicine for adults and children, and especially with sleep disordered breathing. And Dr. Sambatero is also the author, yes, we see that in the background. Dr. Sambatero is also the author of the book, Stop the Snore. So if you haven't grabbed a copy of that, make sure you do. All right. I know, Dr. Sam, you're going to speak first, but let me also share about Dr. Eberts for those of you that don't know about Dr. Eberts. So Dr. Gene Eberts is a health psychologist. He's been a leader in the field of health psychology for more than 40 years. He has taught more than 2,200 healthcare professionals and several thousand patients how to use the mind to heal the body. He's been an invited presenter at over 60 state, national, and international organizations. And that includes in 1996, the Kuwaiti government invited Dr. Eberts and his wife, Penny, to come and teach their counselors and doctors how to heal the traumatic effects of the Iraqi invasion. He has quite an extensive background with education and awards, including a PhD in psychology from Stanford University. So welcome, Dr. Eberts. Awesome. Great speakers. I'm so excited for this. Oh, we still got more people jumping in. All right. This is great.
Thanks, Renee, for that great introduction.
Absolutely. You're
awesome.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right. If anyone needs anything, just chat to me and I'll be here to help, okay? But Dr. Sam, if you want to go ahead and kick it off.
All right. So we're here today to talk about how you can protect your family. You'll see in this title screen, it says from COVID-19, but it's really about protecting you with a healthy immune system against anything, whether it's SARS-1, SARS-2, SARS-3, SARS-4, COVID-19, 20, 21. There are going to be these things that are going to enter our life. They've been around longer than we have. Viruses, bacteria, that we need them in our microbiome. We need them in our environment to survive. So we want to give you some tips and techniques of how to protect yourself during this time. This is the horrible looking coronavirus with those things, proteins sticking out that we've all been experiencing for the last 6 months and the devastation that occurs. So our goal today and for the future is to replace fear and anxiety, hope, greater meaning, purpose in life. So these are all the things that I think are important that we're not considering maybe. To come together as spiritual beings with our fellow humans, come out of this as more enlightened species and realize where our priorities should be, not material, but on building meaningful relationships. That's extremely important. What we're not going to talk about today and what our objective is not are, one, are masks effective or not? We may get that into a future one. Should we be wearing masks or not? We'll talk about that in the future. How contagious is COVID-19? And are the report numbers correct? We'll get to those things in a future webinar, so hang tight. But today we want to give you some things to help protect you and your family. So we are all in this together. I know many people, we've said these things before, but this is probably the first time, certainly in my life, where it's a global epidemic and it's affecting everybody from east to west, north and south. So what are some of the things? So we're going to talk about some topics here. True caring versus overcaring. What the germ theory is, introduced by Louis Pasteur. And what is the terrain theory, introduced by none other than, if you may know his name, is Antoine Beauchamp. who was the father of cellular theory. This is a very important concept that everyone on this has to listen to and pay attention to. It'll change the way you look at things in terms of infections. And we're going to go over some best strategies to optimize your internal terrain. And for those who can hang in there for the hour, there's a special centering exercise at the end. So just hang tight. And I'm going to leave this back over to Dr. We're going to call him Dr. G, and I'm Dr. Sam.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm used to that. All right. I'm going to focus a lot during this presentation on the effectiveness of stress in both injuring and enhancing our immune system. But first, I want to talk about something that comes out of HeartMath. It's called true caring versus over-caring. Now, compassion and care are powerful attributes of the heart. Compassion and care provide regenerative energy for both the sender and receiver, even if we don't always see the ways that it nurtures and heals us. So caring is an essential part of being human, and it's something that is really important to us. However, there's a point at which caring can become over-caring, whether that's strongly identifying with another person and feeling threatened when they feel threatened, or whether it's caring about an idea or quite frankly, a theory. Because we'll be talking about two theories today, as Dr. Sam said, germ theory and terrain theory. But I want to emphasize they're theories. They're not facts. They're things that we are exposed to. And neither one is absolutely true nor absolutely false. So there's a lot of controversy there. And this is where overcaring can come into play. If we get too attached to any idea, function, theory, whatever, we open ourselves to the possibility of being stressed by it. We get into arguments with other people. We are threatened if our theory is threatened or our beliefs are threatened, just like we would if a loved one were threatened. And that can actually harm our immune system. So it's perfectly fine to care about our beliefs. But if we take it too far, we're actually facilitating lowering our immunity to viruses and other kinds of illnesses. So with that said, I'm going to turn to the germ theory and what that tells us. And as I said, this is just a theory. It is controversial. But I want to go through what we are being advised to do without getting into the details of why we should or should not do it. I want to focus on emergency symptoms. Now, these are the symptoms that if they occur in you or someone you care for, it's time to get to the hospital. We're going to talk about trouble breathing, chest pain, and pressure. Very important sign that says this is potentially dangerous. New or sudden confusion. Inability to wake or stay awake, and also if your face or lips start turning blue. These are clear signs that something important is happening that is concernful. There are lots of other signs and symptoms, and more keep coming out each and every day. But these are, I think, the important ones to pay attention to, at least in terms of taking an emergency. Now, what we know about the contagion, or what the germ theory tells us, it has to do with sustained human contact. That's somewhere between 15 minutes and 30 minutes by someone who is infected. Walking past someone in the aisle or whatever who might have COVID-19, I'm not saying it's not dangerous, but it's unlikely, because we're talking about viral load, and that is the intake of the virus that may overwhelm the system, again, from the germ theory perspective. Also, droplets, coughing and sneezing, and aerosol, talking, shouting. These have kind of been demonstrated to have some effect on the infection rate. This last one, contaminated objects, there's really not a lot of support to show that this is actually a source of a COVID contamination. So it's not being concerned really about packages that you get in the mail or whatever. Take reasonable caution, but this is probably the least important one. Prevention. Here we go with the things that are more conflictual. Avoid human contact. Now, of course, if everyone did that, and for the rest of their lives, no one who doesn't have COVID-19 would get COVID-19. That just makes perfect sense. but it's practically impossible to do that and also extremely unhealthy. But to the degree that you can self-isolate, especially if you or someone you know is ill or does have COVID-19, that would be advisable. Do not touch your face or wear a mask. And wash your hands for at least 20 seconds. The last one is carry sanitizer and clean everything. And as I said, these are areas that there are some conflict over these things in terms of what to do, how to do them, should you do them. But this is what we're being advised to do by the CDC and other medical professionals. What you choose to do is really your choice, and I think what we recognize is that do what's most comfortable for you. I would just advise being cautious, not overly cautious, but cautious. Okay, Dr. Sam, back to you.
All right, thank you for that. That was awesome. So with that said, oh, by the way, you can, if you don't want to see everyone in the screen, you can, Renee, what do they need to do?
Yep, make sure it's on speaker view instead of gallery view.
Yeah.
Usually at the top right corner.
Yeah. So let's talk about the difference between the terrain theory and the germ theory, because it has a lot to do with how you approach this, not just for COVID-19, but for any infection. And you could say there are extremes to the right, extremes to the left. I said we're not going to get into all that at this webinar, but as Dr. Jean said, be cautious and also be respectful of others. If you don't buy into the whole thing, there are others out there that buy into it totally, and we need to respect their anxieties or fears because it is real for them. So this is a good, I think, example. If you look at this slide, germ theory versus terrain. Germ theory was introduced from Louis Pasteur, actually, with the invention and introduction of antibiotics. And then the terrain theory was by Anton Bouchon, talked about the terrain. So just think about this. If you have exposure to a germ, you have to be weakened, your immune system, in order to be susceptible or to develop this, whatever you're being exposed to. And let's don't, be easy on this. We are exposed to bacteria, fungus, molds, viruses every day. So be cautious, but the purpose of this is to give you some tools, especially how to build your immune system, and then also some emotional things that can help you to reduce the anxiety. So think about, you want to have that clean fish bowl on the right, or do you want to have the one on the left? It's your choice. I'll take the one on the right myself. I will do everything I can to keep my immune system strong. So modern medicine obviously is based on germ theory. This is why they are without relief at all. It's just driving home, using disinfectant soaps and sprays. Antibiotics are the answer to infections versus how about building your immune system up? Reliance on vaccines for immunity, that will probably be a future discussion also. Chemotherapy and radiation and surgical interventions. And just somebody says a little about disinfectant soaps. I'm very cautious about that. There's a lot of toxic material being sprayed out there. We're going to make people, they're so already fearful of bugs, that they're going to totally eliminate those in their environment. We need to have and live in harmony in a symbiotic relationship with these microorganisms. So don't overspray everything. There's a great book called Eat Dirt. I highly recommend it. So chemo, radiation, surgery are not attacking germs. They are attacking the terrain. This is why so many people have issues after being treated for cancer, because now they've weakened the system that was already weak and enabled the body to develop cancer, because we all basically have cancer in our body every day. It's just how our body handles it. So let's talk a little bit about why strengthening your immune system is the best. I think the best choice. This is what I would go with. I will support this 100%. Best strategies. What are some of those strategies? And I'm sure most of the people on this webinar are already doing things, and would love to hear and get some feedback from anyone who's doing things that we might feel can also help other people on this call and society in general. So we're going to talk about the health of the mouth. It definitely reflects what's going on in the rest of the body, and there's a bi-directional relationship. So what's happening in your mouth is going to affect your body, and how you're treating your body is going to affect your mouth. So your mouth is the first line of defense. So, for example, when you digest food, especially carbohydrates, there's an enzyme called salivary amylase. That's what helps to break down the carbohydrates. It's the first part of the defense mechanism. In the mouth, we have things like periodontal disease with anaerobic bacteria. We have hidden jaw infections that can harbor anaerobic bacteria. Also important is to remember the mouth has its own microbiome, and we must support that. We want to keep it healthy. So we don't want to overburden it with lots of mouthwashes, especially those that have alcohol in it. You're going to reduce that microbiome. The microbiome is part of your defense, but it also produces nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, so it helps your circulatory system. Mouth has, as I said, digested the carbohydrates. And remember, and this is especially important, is that these viruses enter our body through our nasal passages or through our mouth. Now there's concern, since the eyes are a mucous membrane, that we should be wearing goggles to protect our eyes also. So there's no doubt that oral infections can result in systemic health issues such as cardiovascular disease, stroke, diabetes, hypertension. These have all been proven. There's plenty of studies to back that up. There is a study that just came out. We don't have it on here, but we can link to it. A study that showed periodontal disease and a link to COVID-19. So we got to make sure, and this is not just a push to come in and have your teeth cleaned, but it is important, just so people take it for granted sometimes how important it is, the oral cavity and its impact on overall health. So let's talk about detoxification. If your body is overtaxed through toxic overload, environmental toxins, food toxins, dental toxins such as mercury, root canals, those things can affect your immune system. And what does this do? It makes the body weaker and more susceptible to these pathogenic microorganisms that we're all exposed to on a regular basis. So when the liver is overtaxed, it affects your immune system. So how do we create new health-focused habits? Habits are always difficult, but with discipline and commitment and determination, we can change any habit. And so when we look at this issue, let's talk about lifestyle. Lifestyle, we're going to get into a little bit more about what that's all about. And there are some techniques that can help you to change your habits, such as EFT. But let's talk about some of these things that everyone can do. You don't have to worry about the gyms being open or closed now. These things you can do at home. Regular movement, exercises. This all enhances not just the body, but also the mind. And understand that they've done studies, and the areas in the world where there are more centenarians, the #1 denominator was walking. So it's very easy. Doesn't cost you anything. There's no excuse. You can do it fast. You can do it slow. It's your choice. Nutrition. Now, I'm going to touch on this a little bit, but we have an expert on here, Renee. In the future webinar, we'd love to have her on and tap into this in a much bigger way. So what do you want to avoid? What do you want to include? I'm going to be very basic here. What do you want to avoid? Processed foods. Get whole foods. Eat whole foods. Avoid hydrogenated oils. Avoid sugars, gluten, wheat, and soy if you're sensitive to them. All those can affect your immune system. When the body has to react negatively to these by producing immunoglobulins, your immune system is on defense at that point and may not be able to handle anything else that it's exposed to. There are immune boosters in terms of supplements. I'm going to name a few of these. There's immune maintenance, and then there's antiviral supplements. So we're going to talk about some of those things here in just a second. Here's the studies, vitamin D deficiency studies and COVID-19. So I would guess that, well, I don't know. We have a very special number of guests on this webinar. But in general, the general population have a high vitamin D deficiency. And main reason, we're not getting enough sun. The best way to improve your vitamin D levels is to get out in the sunshine. First thing in the morning, first sunshine, get your feet on the ground, and get that sunshine. You need the vitamin D. If you can't get that, and it's difficult as we get into the winter months, because you want to expose as much skin as possible, you can take vitamin D supplements, and you always want to take that with K2. So vitamin D3 and K2. Very important to combine those two. So here's some of the things we're going to list. I'll go through them quickly. If you want, take out your phone right now. You can take a snapshot of this. Nitric oxide, which helps, as I said, dilate the blood vessel. Nattokinase, which helps break up blood clots. Most of these you probably already know. Liposomal C, liposomal glutathione, liposomal cat's claw. We like liposomal because it can be immediately taken into the body. It doesn't have to go through the digestive system, then the hepatic portal system, so it'll get right into your system. Immunoberry, question about whether you want to take that if you get exposed or you're positive. Some are saying that because it's an immune booster, you could stimulate a cytokine storm. Colloidal silver, always a great antimicrobial. Vitamin D3 and K2 we talked about. Ozone, zinc. I don't think that's spelled right, but that's okay. Quercetin, which some say is similar as from a supplement as hydrochloroquine. That, along with it, which helps the zinc to be taken into the cell. Olive leaf is a great antiviral. Astragalus, Androphilus, Echinacea, propolis. I love that, especially the propolis throat spray from beekeepers. Curcumin, great anti-inflammatory. Alicidin, garlic. You know, we're all staying home, not going out. Who cares if you smell like garlic? That's fine. Monolaurin, great antiviral. And colostrum, which comes from mother's breast, great immunostimulant. So other therapies, and these are some things that I would highly recommend. Ozone, and there's some clear studies out there right now. Again, some controversy. Some think ozone's toxic. If it's used properly, it's not toxic. You can do ozone through ear insufflation. There are some doctors that actually will draw your blood out, ozonate it, and put it back in your body. So they've had some success with this in Europe. Far infrared sauna, not the same as any other sauna. The infrared will allow you to raise the temperature much higher and get deeper into the skin, deeper into the system, deeper into the cells. And you will sweat. And it's not the same. I just read a recent study as sweating when you exercise. This is much more effective in detoxifying. Nebulizers. I just bought one myself. You can get them. You can get them from a company. It's called justnebulize.com. Great thing. Put colloidal silver in there. You can put isotonic ketone water. So those things, you're going to help clear out the nasal passages. Very important, because remember, that's the entry point. So you want to keep that clean. PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequency. If you have access to that, that's a great way to balance out the body's electromagnetic fields. Let's see what, I'm just going to go a couple more things there before we switch over back to Dr. Jean. As I said, ozone is great. Nebulizers are great. I want to do something real quick here, and then we're going to actually let it over to Renee and then to Dr. Jean. These bacteria enter through the nose and through the mouth. Well, they should not be entering through the mouth unless you're a mouth breather. So one thing that can really help is breathing through your nose. And I'm going to give you a quick exercise. You can practice this any other time. I want everyone taking in a deep breath. Everyone exhale as much as you can. Exhale, 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 and then hold your breath. And you can do that for a count of 30 or more. If you do that throughout the day and do that every day, It will clear out your nasal passages. You'll be breathing much, much better through your nose, and you will eliminate the breathing through your mouth, which is very, very negative. Puts you in a sympathetic state. Nasal breathing puts you in a parasympathetic state. So you're improving autonomic nervous system, and you're also, remember, the nose produces nitric oxide. It filters out microorganisms, and it's a dehumidifier. So I'm going to jump off here. Renee, I want Renee to just tell her story, because people are going to know, well, do you know anybody that's had COVID? Renee did turn up positive, her and her husband, for COVID. They're no longer contagious. Don't worry. She's in Las Vegas, so she's away from you all. So no worry. So Renee, if you don't mind, before we go back over to Dr. Jean, can you tell a little bit about your story? Because obviously she
Sure.
recovered.
Yes, recovered and doing well. Yeah, I'm. Well, first of all, thank you for all the great tips, especially the mouth breathing. I think that's so important to always breathe through your nose. Yeah, I think a lot of us have realized we don't know anyone that has had COVID. You know, almost everyone that I told, family and friends, have said, "You're the first person I know." So I do like sharing my experience, hopefully to kind of ease the fear around it. Yes, I know I'm young. I'm 33. I don't have any pre-existing health conditions, which certainly helps. But I was personally sick for about 10 days. I had a very low fever, extreme fatigue. I was easily sleeping 12 to 13 hours a night. Dry cough, sore throat, a little bit of nasal stuff, headache, no appetite, and no taste or smell. So I had a lot of the classic signs that we're hearing about. I personally really focused on sleep. You know, anytime you're sick, sleep is the best thing you can do. So I was fortunate to kind of rearrange my schedule to be allowed to sleep that much. But I think sleep really helped my healing. I have a full spectrum infrared sauna in my house. Again, I'm very fortunate that I literally got it, I think 3 weeks. It was delivered 3 weeks before I got COVID. So the timing was ironic. But I used that for 30 to 40 minutes every day. And I think just sweating out the toxins really helped. And then I used almost every supplement that you just mentioned, Dr. Sam.
Well, I learned from the best.
Thank you. Yeah, I even before I was sick, I was staying up on all the research. Obviously, vitamin D is a big one, zinc, quercetin, EGCG, vitamin C. I was doing liposomal vitamin C every 3 hours. I felt comfortable putting together my own supplement protocol. Of course, I wouldn't recommend everyone do that. You know, maybe work with a health practitioner to put together a preventative plan. And then if you get sick, hopefully no one does, what to do at that point. So supplements were really big. Diet, I was actually fasting almost 20 hours a day, which is usually really hard for me. I don't like fasting, I'll be honest. But I had no appetite, so it was just very easy to get a 20-hour fast in every day. And then when I did eat, you know, warm foods, bone broth, lots of vegetables, obviously no sugar, no refined foods, no caffeine, no alcohol. So just really cleaning things up. Yeah, that's what I did. And it took about 10 days to get through. So hopefully
Renee,
that's helpful.
Thanks for sharing that with us, because some people don't know anyone who's actually had COVID. We all know and don't know maybe people who have passed because of it. So sharing your experience, because I think what's, for me, the most important thing and it'll help, and Dr. Jean will get into some techniques, is just look at what the statistics are. And then 98 to 98% of the people who do become exposed or become positive will heal and will survive. And that's a pretty big number in considering all the fear that we're going through and knowing that only 1 or 2% of the people. Not that I think that's good. I'd like it to be 0. So again, be cautious. And before Dr. Jean jumps in, I don't know how I forgot this, because this is my expertise. I didn't say anything about sleep and how important it is. And I just want to mention one important study that's been repeated over and over again. 1 night of poor sleep can drop your lymphocyte levels down 40%. You ever wonder why, if you had a bad night's sleep, you're more susceptible to all the microorganisms, your immune system is compromised, so you have a much higher rate. And unfortunately, because of the stress, if you turn it on the news, stop it, because it's just stressing you out, and that will affect your sleep. So it's a vicious cycle. We don't sleep, we produce cortisol, we don't get rest, so we tend to eat more, so that it goes on, and then you become more and more susceptible. So anyway, Dr. Gene, step in. We got some good techniques from him that are going to help everyone. Share these with your family.
Okay, I'd like to just tell a little bit of my story first. Back in 2007, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. I'm 78 years old now, so I'm in that kind of high-risk category. But way back then, you know, I was connected with Dr. Sambatero, and I've been studying health psychology for many, many years. So I started a program for myself. I didn't seek any other intervention. I do a hot tub for about half an hour, raises my core temperature to about 101, 102. I then do far infrared sauna for about another half an hour and use oxygen supplementation with an oxygen generator during that time. Take nutraceuticals, I exercise. So I'm doing a lot of the things that, you know, that we're kind of sharing with you. I would say almost out of necessity. So at any rate, let me go ahead and move on from that. That's my story.
Yeah, thanks for that, giving your history, Gene. That's helpful for people to know.
I think it's important to understand that we all have various degrees and levels of threat from this, and some of us are more at risk than others. But that's why it's so important that we focus on taking care of our immune system. And this is not coming up too quickly here. Oh, here we go. All right. So psycho-emotional, that's really my, you know, major focus here. The healing power of positive psychology. I would start out by saying that traditionally psychology, stemming from World War II, when we actually were given permission to treat patients because of the overload of soldiers returning from the war, the focus has been mostly, as the medical model, on what's wrong, what's busted, what needs to be fixed. And that's not terrible or bad, but something new has evolved out of that, and that is positive psychology. What they've really done is focus more on strengths and goals, acting out of kindness and creating flow in your life, focusing on positive experiences and gratitude, forgiveness, and acceptance. And it's really quite interesting to know that when they've compared these two forms of treatment, focusing on the positive, focusing on the negative, it turns out that positive psychology can be just as effective and sometimes even more effective than focusing on the negative. So I just wanted to give that a little plug. By the way, everything I'm going through here now, we will have a seminar that will focus almost entirely on that area. So I'm going to go through pretty quickly and not spend a lot of time with each of these. Emotional freedom techniques, many of you might know this is EFT. If you don't, it's a way of utilizing the meridians of the body by tapping on them or somehow activating them to alter our emotional responses. And it's been used extensively, and especially now, for actually healing physical conditions. I'm in that particular group myself, and I'm focusing on that and amplifying that in my own life. One of the reasons I really like this technique, it's one of the most effective do-it-yourself tools available. You can use this technique on yourself without a lot of external guidance, such as a coach or a therapist such as myself. The healing power of spiritual optimism. Learning how to use stress as a guide and an ally rather than looking at it as a bad thing that we can't eliminate stress from our life at all. I mean, completely. So these whole things like eliminate stress or whatever, they're really misleading. Stress is a vital part of who we are. So how can we use that, to help us to grow spiritually? And also enhancing flow and spiritual experiences. That's the essence of healing power of spiritual optimism. Energy healing, again, is coming to the fore as a way of utilizing person-to-person, energy-to-energy, to actually tap into the body's natural healing abilities and facilitate healing. Mm-hmm. What's the fuss, all the fuss about stress? Well, it happens to be one of the major causes or contributors to over 80% of all disease. That's what statistics tell us. And it's extremely important that we deal more effectively. Because right now we are having, more than one epidemic. We're having a stress epidemic throughout the world. And I think something like 80% of Americans are reporting that their mental health has been damaged by this pandemic. So clearly this is important. I'm going to show you just a brief video. It's not recent, but it does kind of lay out some of the things about stress. It's about 4 minutes long.
I have a 3 o'clock call as well.
At her office, corporate attorney Teresa Paul deals with phone calls and emails, deadlines, and meetings.
There's always so much going on here. If I don't feed children, that's a disaster.
At home, mother of 4, Teresa Paul deals with family meals,
The only thing that we haven't done is mom's coffee.
children's schedules, clean up the kitchen,
What time do you want me to pick them up?
drop off the kids, juggle some office emails, and don't forget, the dog needs a walk.
When you know you've got a long list, you just power through.
Our brains are designed to help us power through. Under stress, the brain signals to release hormones including adrenaline and cortisol. They give us energy, strengthen the immune system, improve reflexes, even help our memory.
What's the percentage in maintenance?
But if we are always under stress, the release of cortisol begins to work against us.
Chronic stress affects your head, your heart, your liver, your immune system.
McEwen has discovered that chronic stress causes neurons in the brain to shrink and change shape. In animals, that causes a loss of memory, increased anxiety, and aggressiveness, and can lead to signs of depression. Other research has shown how chronic stress can speed up aging and make us more prone to disease.
Stress has been shown to affect almost every physiological system we have, and we've now shown that stress even affects cells at the molecular level.
Research has shown that telomeres, the protective coating at the end of chromosomes, gets frayed and worn by stress, mimicking the effects of aging. In a world now filled with cell phones and BlackBerries, instant messaging, and expectations of 24/7, our brains can get a stress signal every time an email comes in. Technology is creating new sources of chronic stress.
I actually had one of my partners walk into my office. I looked at him and just said, What now?
Even those who manage stress well can sometimes be overwhelmed. Those who don't manage stress, psychologist Christina Maslach discovered, can reach a breaking point, burnout.
When people are experiencing burnout, they are more likely to make mistakes, make errors. They don't work as well.
But scientists say the brain's resilience can help prevent burnout.
The important thing to remember, though, is when we stop the stress, the neurons will go back to normal size.
The key is to give the brain time without stress, relaxing with family, exercising, eating well, and sometimes, just sometimes, ignoring those emails. John Blackstone,
Yes.
CBS News, Hillsborough, California.
That's good.
So I just want to point out that it's really the issue of chronic stress. And part of what we're discovering is that there's a great deal of stress that we are all under that we're not consciously aware of. So it's not just the things that disturb you emotionally. Clearly, that's stressful. But there is this unconscious stress that we are pretty much unaware of, and we adapt to. It becomes more normal for us. And that's part of what we need to address as well. For example, things like meditation deal with that in an indirect way. They also, interestingly enough, lengthen the telomeres. So, but things like laughter and humor, breathing, relaxation, guided imagery, all of these things are quite effective in helping to diminish both the stress that we acknowledge and experience, as well as that unconscious stress. I want to turn now to the Heart Math Institute, and this will bring us into the exercise that I want to invite you to take part in. This is the research that was done there at the Heart Math Institute. The heart brain, which you're coming to call it, has 40,000 neurons surrounding it, approximately, which is quite impressive, and that's why it's called the heart brain, because it turns out that there are actually more connections from the heart to the brain than vice versa. So the heart really drives the brain when it comes to emotions and planning and those kinds of things, because the heart can think, it can plan, it can, sense the rest of our body. There are all kinds of things that happen in the heart. Now, this is another interesting component of that. The brain, these are the brain waves over here on the left-hand side, compared to the heart waves. The heart produces 40 to 60 times more electrical amplitude than the brain, okay? And this is another component of that, is that the strength of the heart's magnetic field is 5,000 times greater than the field generated by the brain and can be measured several feet away from the body in all directions. The fascinating thing is we'll go into this next, the rhythm that the heart takes on. This is a frustration rhythm, if you will, and this is the appreciation. Appreciation and love and compassion, these generate coherence in the heart and therefore in the brain. The fascinating thing is that this 5,000 times greater field actually affects the brain waves of people in your vicinity. It's what in California we used to call, what do we call it in California?
I think we'd call it quantum entanglement.
That would work.
Yeah.
The immune system is diminished by frustration and enhanced by appreciation. So when you create coherence, you're actually enhancing the immune system for up to 6 hours just by having that feeling of appreciation, love, compassion. Okay, so creating coherence, the heart breathing exercise. This comes right out of the heart math. And if you're willing, what I'd like you to do, you can keep your eyes open or close your eyes. That's up to you. Won't be much to look at, but I'd like you to start breathing, focusing your attention on your heart area, and breathe a little slower and maybe a little deeper than normal. So you breathe in for 4 seconds and out for about 6 seconds. Now, as you're doing that, what begins to happen is your physiology begins to slow down. And focusing on the heart tends to generate that field, that coherence field, even more clearly. The next component is imagine breathing through your heart. So take a slow breath in and out through your heart area. It might even help if you placed your hand over your heart. Breathe in through your heart, breathe out through your heart. And just take a moment or two to experience that and what that's like. Slowly in, slowly out. The next part of the exercise is heart feeling. While you're breathing in and out through your heart, I'd like you just to recall a time when you felt really good. Some amazing thing happened. It might have been a childbirth, or you saw an opening expanse in front of you in terms of mountains or lakes or the sun, clouds, something that just facilitated a good feeling inside. It would have been love, compassion, caring. Just be with that feeling as you breathe in and out through your heart. And just take a moment with it. Just be with that experience. Good. Now, putting that all together, this is something you can do on your own. You start with heart breathing. Focus on your heart. Place your hand over your heart and breathe through your heart. And then bring on a heartfelt feeling. Because all of these lessons we've learned, all of these myths that we've heard over the course of our lives about the heart being important and a source of our caring and our spirit, there is some truth to that. Now I'd like you to take a moment or two and gently focus on the room. Just bring your attention back to the here and now. Now, if you have your phone available, this is a link to a handout I'd like you to download. bit.ly / capital JCN, small o, capital PANIC. JC, no panic. And it's 10 important reasons why we don't need to panic. So if you take a moment or two and either write that down or take a picture.
Yeah, interesting. As we talk about breathing and what panic does, it changes your breathing technique. Right? It's just the way the autonomic nervous system works.
Yeah.
So by using some of these techniques that Dr. Jean just went over, when you're starting to feel that stress or panic, dealing with family, dealing with work, dealing with the COVID whole thing that's going on, use those breathing techniques.
Yeah.
It'll ground you, it'll bring you back down to a more parasympathetic state.
And even if you're not experiencing a direct stressor, remember there is this underlying unconscious stress that most of us are completely unaware of. We've just adapted to it. So doing this maybe once in the morning and or once in the evening can also be helpful whether or not you're experiencing any direct impact of stress. I would like to point out also that psychology, Psyche was in the underworld, and he actually breathed in life into the newborn before they became live on the earth. So psychology is actually the study of the breath of life. That's almost essentially what it means. At any rate, so I think we're now opening to Q&A.
Yeah, I just want to say one last thing. We talk about breathing because everyone feels compromised because now they're wearing something over their face and nose. And there's a lot of concern and I think some misinformation. I've done some studies. I mean, I'm an expert on wearing a mask. I've been wearing a mask for 35 years. So,
there you go.
Nothing to hide. But, you know, I started practice. We didn't even wear gloves or a mask. So until the HIV epidemic hit. So I'm used to wearing a mask. So if I was truly breathing my CO2 all day long, I probably would have passed out a long time ago.
There you go.
I think that the issue is for some people, if you have COPD or other respiratory issues, that can be an issue. There's no doubt. But understand that CO2 is necessary to release the oxygen that's in the red blood cells.
Yep.
So CO2 can be good. There's exercise programs, hypoxic training, high altitude training, where you actually are increasing your CO2 levels. I've done some of this training, but for most people, if you're not healthy or you have these other respiratory issues, it could be an issue. So again, it's not one way or the other. It depends on the individual. And I think you just need to know that you're probably not going to pass out by wearing a mask. And we'll get into more about, I said I wasn't going to talk about this. Are they necessary or not? Hold on to the next webinar.
There you go.
All right. So Renee, can you open up to the chat room? And
Yeah, we already have some great questions.
Okay.
So to start off, so Linda was asking, are you exhaling through your mouth? So Dr. Sam, when you were saying earlier about just breathing through your nose, do you want to share like a quick thing about
Right. So
that?
Nice big inhale, exhale everything, nose, mouth, as long as you're 6 feet away from anyone. So
there you go.
But there is benefit.
Completely.
There is benefit to just inhaling and exhaling through your nose at times, right?
Yeah, this is a specific technique called Butico breathing. It'll just help open up the nasal passages. If you feel some stuffiness or congestion, it'll clear your nose out immediately. And it'll also help improve nitric oxide. If you're going to talk about really quieting the mind down and the body and the heart, as Jean talked about, I would do nasal in, nasal out with the mouth closed.
Right.
Great, thanks.
And then if you really want to get creative, what you can do is alternate your nostrils. And that's a pranayama technique from ancient India, which actually activates the different sides of the brain and creates coherence. So
I
if
love
people are
that.
interested, we may do a breathing webinar.
yeah, that'd be
A
great.
lot to learn.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Linda's like, yes, please. Great. Kim asked, is red light therapy useful? Do either of you want to
Absolutely.
take that?
Renee, you would agree. We both have are Juve lights. That's just one company that produces a red light. I've been involved with what is now called photobiomodulation. When I first started in practice, I had, well, actually not first, it was in the 90s. I got introduced to my first red light lasers in the 670 nanometers. Very healing. Interesting, the device, if you looked on the back of it, it said for animal or veterinary use only. So I've been using this since the early 90s, and now I have a Juve light where I will stand in front of that light for a period of 20 minutes. It's very, very effective. It has a greater effect in bringing those certain light frequencies that you're going to get from the sun that probably most of us aren't getting.
Yeah,
Renee, you want to add to that?
I would just say red light really, it works on the mitochondria. So, and the mitochondria I think of as like, the powerhouse of our cells. If the mitochondria aren't working, nothing really else in your body's going to work. So that's why I like red light therapy, because it supports that.
And I would say color and light therapy have been an important therapeutic treatment in psychology for some time now. I actually have a color and light machine that I've used for patients. And actually it's been quite effective for post-traumatic stress disorder. What it does is vary the lights. You have different.
Just bring your attention back to the here and now.
Let's see, the pulse of the light. So, and as like I said, it has a very, very good background in terms of its effectiveness.
I think we're all affected by color. If you walk into someone's house and they're like, it's painted some color that's just obnoxious, and
absolutely,
it affects you. It really does.
Yeah. I think football stadiums do that. They paint the other team's locker room like pink or something, right?
Well, it's also, you'll find in fast food restaurants, they're painted in stark, solid colors because that's a little more anxiety producing and gets you out more quickly.
Fascinating.
So,
great.
Okay.
Kim, hopefully that answered your question there.
Hi, Kim.
Feel free to send in more questions. Okay, Linda asked, is an Epsom salt bath good for detoxification?
Yes, definitely. The magnesium in those things will help pull out toxins. Make sure that when you get out of the bathtub from that, to shower off. Don't just try to wipe off because those toxins are in your skin on the surface. So that's a great way. And there's other things you can add in there like diatomaceous earth and detoxifying substances that can help even better.
And I would add one more thing, depending on if you have a whole house water filter or not. If you're doing a bath, I would say either get a whole house water filter, or there's actually devices like little balls you can just drop in the water and they'll actually bind to the toxins, because obviously you don't want to be bathing in tap water.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about toxins. I would say that my hot tub regime includes hydrogen peroxide and other types of mineral salts such as copper and silver and those things, which are much more effective at removing bacteria and mold and those kinds of things, slime. And I do it without any of the toxic effects of chlorine or bromine that most people, or chloride that most people use in their hot tub. So just a little cue there.
Did you say slime?
Yeah, well, it's slime. Well, it does get slimy.
I just call the Ghostbusters in that case.
If you just leave it grow, it will get slimy.
Yeah.
Great answers. Thank you. Next question. What is your opinion of the Chi machine for the lymphatic system?
I have a little bit of knowledge about that. I don't have. It's one of the toys I don't have. I know it definitely moves lymph. I have something called the Balancer Pro, which I use for lymphatic removal. But the Chi machine is an excellent machine. I've heard good response from people, so I would endorse it.
Great.
While we're talking about Qi, I guess I'd also recommend Tai Chi and Qigong, which are healing methods, although they're physical activity like exercise, but they also have demonstrated their ability to heal physically.
So Molly is saying she has a Chi machine, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Very good.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Janet. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Linda. Kim asked, is there a brand of whole house water filters that you recommend?
Oh my God, you had to bring that up.
Does everyone have an hour?
Well, you know how the universe works. I just spent last weekend in Knoxville with, I would say, is the world leading expert in water. He was one of the first inventor of reverse osmosis. His name is Robert Slovak. Um, we just don't have enough time to go over all that. If you want to reach out to me, I can give you some more information about that. I have tons of information. I was writing notes so fast, my hands started cramping. So there's a lot to learn about. There's a lot of bad information. I would say, one, reverse osmosis, got to be a little bit careful about if you're not also using some kind of charcoal or carbon filter. And also, get away from the alkalizing water. I mean, I know many of us on here, including myself, Dr. Gene, and Renee, we all owned alkalizing water filters, and we can get into more of that maybe in a future webinar, why. So I'm just whetting your appetite.
Yeah, for the reverse osmosis, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with this, but as I did my research a while back, there was some issue of it removing all the positive things, the calcium and those kinds of positive elements that needed to then be supplemented or put back in the water. Is that still held true?
That's more for distilled water. So distilled water is an excellent way to get good, clean water, but you will have to add minerals back in.
All right.
And the other thing I said, not getting too into the rabbit hole, but we're all concerned about fluoride and chlorine, but there's these HCM, hydrochloromethanes that are in the water. You don't even know about it.
Right.
So you can have your water tested. You can go to your, reach out to your county, and they will come and test your water.
Great. I mean, my answer, I think, before I talked to you last weekend would have been, I really like Dr. Mercola's set of filters. Like, you can do countertop, under the sink, whole house. But I guess stay tuned as we learn more from what you heard last weekend. Yeah. Great. Okay, can you talk about the effect of long-term xylitol use on the microbiome in the mouth and sinuses? Is it beneficial, or does it disrupt commensal biofilms?
I think, like with anything that you're using in the mouth, don't overdo it. Xylitol is a specific ingredient that we find now in gums and mouthwashes and toothpaste. It is anti-karyogenic. So it's specifically for inhibiting Staph aureus, which is the main bacteria to cause. But that's looking at, again, sort of a more of a fish tank versus, a dirty fish tank versus looking at the whole terrain. So I would be careful about overdoing it. If you reduce the microbiome in your mouth, you're also reducing nitric oxide. And there's a study that showed reducing nitric oxide due to overuse of mouthwashes can actually cause hypertension. Right? That's very recent. I was surprised, because you got to be kidding me. So high blood pressure could be due to killing the good microbiome in your mouth. Hope that was helpful.
Right. The other thing about hydrogen peroxide, I use 30% hydrogen peroxide, which is quite dangerous to handle if you don't do it appropriately. And there's an online site you can get it from. But that's what I use in the hot tub. I use maybe a cup or half a cup actually once a day.
Great. Thank you.
Lots of questions.
Yes. So circling back to the Epsom salt bath, Linda is asking what product to add. The one that I was talking about, Linda, maybe if I can get your email address, I can send you a link. You can usually you can get it online on Amazon. It's just like a vitamin C detox little ball that you just throw in there.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps. I'll try and connect with you. That's it. Look at it. We're right on time. You did it. 1 hour.
That's
1 hour.
We squeezed a lot of material in that.
That's sweet.
59 minutes. We'll say hello to everyone. I haven't said already. I see Carolyn, Dolores, Kim, Brenda. How you doing? Linda, Bill, you made it. Deb, how you doing? Thank you all for joining.
Well,
more to come.
Can we do one more question?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, last one. Kim says she's been oil pulling for a while. She was recently listening to a webinar, and the dentist indicated that oil pulling can destroy too much of the healthy bacteria in the mouth. Is that too much?
Renee? I mean, I'll jump in a second, but Renee, well, of course, I introduced her to oil pulling, then she became sort of the leading expert and was actually invited to be on the Dr. Oz show to talk about oil pulling. So why don't you jump in there?
I do not see any concern. I mean, I don't think it's something you need to do every day, maybe 3 mornings a week. I would just be really careful what oil you're using. I would either use organic sesame oil, or if you really would prefer doing a coconut oil, look for the brand Skinny. I know you have that at the Julian Center. You can get it online on Amazon. But Skinny coconut oil, what they do is they actually alkalize the oil so it's specific for oil pulling. If you're using regular coconut oil off the shelf, it is too acidic, and you can actually wear down the enamel, and then you're going to end up spending more time at the Julian Center. So, so be careful with the acidity of regular coconut oil. It's really cleansing the mouth. I don't see it as, like an antibiotic where it's just going in and it's killing everything. It's really, I think, more balancing the microbiome. So maybe 3 times a week, get a really good healthy oil. Make sure you're spitting it out in the trash after. Yes. And I mean, that's much better. Like if you do that, you don't even need any kind of mouthwash. I think most mouthwashes are problematic.
Yeah, you don't want to overdo it with killing microorganisms. And using oil pulling is a detoxifier, really. So it helps with inflammation. It's not really an antimicrobial. And this has been around for 4,000 years in Ayurvedic medicine. They used sesame oil. But the whole thing came about with coconut oil because I think it's just more pleasant tasting. But in answer to your question, that should not affect the overall oral microbiome. Great question.
Yeah, very good question. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for taking that extra one.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for all the nice comments, everyone. Good to see everybody.
I would like to say we haven't yet scheduled our next webinar, but it will be on enhancing your immune system. So we'll be dealing much more focused on that particular issue.
There are lots of details we can get into. So I think most important to take away from this, use the Batico breathing and use Dr. Jean's techniques or EFT if you have it. The main focus of this was to give you some tools to help with all the crazy insanity that's going on now in the world. So it's kind of get you grounded to deal with it. Because some of these things are out of our control, but one thing that's within our control is what we do with our own personal being, whether it's your mind, body, and spirit. But we all are in this together, and we all are quantumly entangled. Thank you all so much for attending.
Have a great Saturday, everyone.
Yeah. Enjoy.
It was good.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.